Hi, welcome to Around and Around. This is our first day of the carbon cycle. We've just finished some material about about photosynthesis, the flow of energy. So for today, November 15 and November 16, periods 2, 5, and 8. Don't forget you need to turn in your gizmos at the beginning of class. And everybody else, you should have waiting for you a packet right on your table. And so you want to put your full name, first and last name, and your period on your new packet. This new packet says Around and Around right at the top. We had warm-up questions up on the board. What is matter, and what do you know about carbon? That people responded to on sticky notes and placed up on the board. And we talked about the fact that matter can be a liquid or a gas or a solid, sorry. And matter is a lot of the things that people said. Matter cannot be created, and it also cannot be destroyed, and that it is building blocks and makes up things. So we're going to get more into that today. What am I learning today? I'm going to begin to learn about the carbon cycle. And why? I'm learning this all so that I can understand how matter moves between biotic and abiotic parts of the ecosystem. So remember, the things we've been doing recently talked a lot about how energy moves around within a specific system. Now we're going to talk about how matter moves. So our big idea is how matter moves between biotic and abiotic parts of the system. And again, matter as opposed to energy. All right, first things first, quick note, late work, now that it is second quarter, this is just a reminder that on your syllabus, it says that late work is, you can submit it within 2 weeks of the due date. And once you've submitted it, within 2 weeks of the due date, it will be graded, and it can have a maximum penalty of 10%. So get that work in within 2 weeks if it's late. Okay, so this is within 2 weeks, super important. Possible penalty up to 10%. And after 2 weeks, it's not going to generally be accepted. Let me know, though, if you have some concerns or special circumstances. Next, makeup work. If you're absent, it is your responsibility as a student to schedule a time during Falcon Focus or after school to make up any lessons or assignments that you missed. Okay, so you can certainly look in Schoology and see if there are video notes like this one and follow along with video notes. Sometimes all the assignments are listed directly in Schoology as helpful hints. But if you missed an exit ticket or if you've missed an assessment, you definitely need to check in and get that taken care of. So technically, you have 1 day to make that assignment up for every day that you've missed. So definitely check in right away to see what you need to get done so that you can get that all scheduled. All right. And just a quick reminder, if you do something that I've already put in the school in the grade book as not turned in, please email me, or if you're in a class with Mr. Bazan as well, email Mr. Bazan to let one of us know. If you have done something that was already listed in SIS as NTI, you need to let me or Mr. Bazan know. Otherwise, we won't know that you've done it late. So we're happy to try to grade things for you if you do them a little bit late and you let us know. Remember, if you send an email, you need to be polite, please. Be specific about the assignment and also include the class period that you have science. It's just that much faster and more helpful. You can explain why it's late if that is relevant, and you can ask us nicely to please grade it and update SIS. So we are happy to generally do that within the 2 weeks if you let us know that you have something that you need to get done. So I know you can't quite read that all. It just says questions. If you are not sure about what all that means, by all means, check in with me or Mr. Bazan if you have him in class as well. All right. On the last page of your packet, you have a piece of paper that looks like this. It's blank, and it's just got this horizontal line and this horizontal line, and then it's got a vertical line here. In the packet, it didn't photocopy super well, but there are straight lines that go across as well. So it's basically notebook paper that's been divided up. So this is a piece of paper that can help you use the Cornell Notes style of note-taking. So I'm just showing it to you. Some people have used Cornell Notes takings in the past, and it's a great way to study material after you've learned it, and it's a great way to organize your thoughts as you're learning new material. So here's how it works pretty quickly. So imagine that paper that I just had. This pinked in section, this shaded section, that's where you can take your notes. You can draw pictures, so you might have drawn an image of a food chain or something. You can write out some kind of bullet point notes that you think are pretty important. And so that's your kind of body of notes section. Over on the left, that small narrow column is a place where you can put key words, so vocabulary words, or questions. So things you might put on there for today would be the word carbon and the word matter. You might write carbon cycle because those are some important keywords. Or you might write a question like, what is the carbon cycle? Then finally, over here, we have our summary. And so at the end of an article, if you're reading an article and taking notes, or at the end of a class, you can just write a summary down here at the bottom, a couple sentences to explain what you learned. So it's just a strategy that might help you in any number of classes. And this is short and sweet, what it looks like. You'll have a title at the top, and normally people put a date when they're taking notes, keywords and questions, main idea, notes, usually using, oops, that word abbreviations is misspelled, but using abbreviations or bullet points, and then a summary down at the bottom. So today I'm going to ask you to put in this heading, the carbon cycle, and it's helpful if you also put around and around because we are learning about the carbon cycle. Today's lab is called Around and Around. All right, so you might use this later on in our day, or you might use it another day when you are studying about something else. All right, so in the end, the carbon cycle, around and around, you can put some main notes here. You can put some keywords like carbon and matter and carbon cycle. And at the end of class, or maybe next Falcon Focus, you can just write yourself a little summary. Okay, I did not show a video, and I did not really talk about this anymore, but today we'll try to use this method a little bit. All right, so now we're diving into class. Who can remember the chemical and written equation for photosynthesis? We can remember that it is carbon dioxide plus water, and these are my chemical formulas for that, yields or produces in the presence of sunlight and chlorophyll. Remember, chlorophyll is the pigment that is in the chloroplast. Yields glucose and oxygen. And we know exactly how much also. 6 carbon dioxide molecules plus 6 water molecules in the presence of sunlight and chlorophyll in the chloroplast yields 1 single glucose and 6 oxygens. During photosynthesis, the carbon found in carbon dioxide over here in the beginning ends up where? Well, we start with it in the air, and it comes into the plant leaf through the stomata, right? But after photosynthesis happens, let's look for our carbon. Here it is. There are 6 carbons all in this big glucose molecule, 6 carbons connected together, right? So our carbon went from carbon dioxide to glucose. What we're going to talk about today is how can we trace where carbon goes. It started out as a gas, but now it is actually a solid, right? It's part of a leaf. All right, so the title of our lab is Around and Around We Go, and then the subtitle is Investigating Matter Cycles and Energy Flow. So, which of these have we already investigated? We've already investigated energy flow, right? We've talked about the flow of energy in a food chain or a food web within an ecosystem. So today we're going to talk about matter cycles, how matter cycles around and around. And so I'd like for you to actively read the introduction on your lab packet and make at least 3 annotations. You can actually pause the video and do this yourself, or you can leave the video on and listen to me read it out loud. If you don't want to listen to me read it aloud, you can just skip through, use your cursor down at the bottom, and skip through the reading. Introduction. In What's for Dinner, you learned that the interactions between organisms in an ecosystem are related to their need to obtain food. Plants make their own food, while animals and decomposers get their food by consuming other organisms, living or dead. Food provides the matter that all organisms need to carry out their life processes. I might pause right here if I happen to be reading this, and I might circle the word food, and I might underline provides the matter, or I might put a star or something, because I know if this is called Around and Around, and I know it's talking about matter cycles, maybe food providing matter has something to do with that. And we also know that food provides energy to carry out life processes. So now let's think about food providing matter that's going to carry out life processes. Okay, second paragraph. Matter in the form of elements such as carbon, oxygen, hydrogen, and nitrogen combine with other elements in many ways to form minerals in the soil, gases in the air, and living cells in plants, animals, and decomposers. All the matter that supports an ecosystem is present within the boundaries of that system and continually cycles among its parts. So I'm going to pause here because I realize I've seen some information about matter, and I know matter is relevant to this lab, right? Matter, it's telling me it's in the form of elements like carbon, oxygen, hydrogen, nitrogen. I would probably underline those 4 elements because we've already worked with carbon and oxygen and hydrogen, right? So if they're adding in nitrogen, that's going to be important too. And they've told me that this is a form of matter, right? Then also it tells me that it exists in minerals in the soil, gases in the air, and living cells in plants, animals, and decomposers. So I might highlight or circle minerals and soil. I might highlight air. I might highlight plants, animals, decomposers. You have lots of ways to annotate, and you're going to annotate in a way that's going to help you. All right. All the matter that supports an ecosystem is present within the boundaries of that system and will continually cycle among its parts. So that's important too. I see the word cycle, and I know cycle was in my title. So the matter that is in the ecosystem continually cycles. So I might underline matter and continually cycles or something like that. But what about energy? Without energy, animals wouldn't be able to grow muscles, digest food, or move. Plants wouldn't be able to grow or perform photosynthesis. No organism would be able to reproduce without energy. How can we explain how organisms get the energy they need? Where does that energy come from? Where does the energy go? These are things that we're going to try to investigate in our lab. So in this investigation, you will conduct a simulation or a model of the carbon cycle to gain a deeper understanding of the ways in which matter cycles through an ecosystem. Subsequently, you will construct a scientific argument to explain how energy moves through the levels of the ecosystem. So the word subsequently basically means next or and then or after that. Subsequently. Like sequence is almost in there, right? So there you go. Subsequently, you will construct a scientific argument to explain how energy moves through the levels of an ecosystem. So we already know that energy does move through the ecosystem, and now we're going to try to explain how that happens. So, in our introduction, we read that food provides the matter that all organisms need to carry out their life processes. Well, what is matter then? Matter is anything that has mass and takes up space. So things that are solid, that means that the matter is organized in a consistent structure that doesn't change. It's a solid structure. If some matter is liquid, then all of the molecules or elements or whatever it is, the particles that are making it up, they're going to take the shape of the container they are in. So a liquid like a beverage, a lemonade or something, it's going to take the shape of the vessel or container that it's in. A gas has very loose particles. They are spread far apart and they are moving around generally. A gas is going to actually take up the entire container that it is in. So the bigger the container, the more spread out the gas particles are. Finally, the fourth form of matter that we talk about is plasma. Plasma is very much like gas, but each one of the gas molecules or particles is ionized, and that means that it is positively or negatively charged with electrons. So if it has extra electrons, oopsie daisy, sorry. Extra electrons, it's going to be negative, and fewer electrons, it's going to be positive. So you can think about this, actually fire is a plasma. We have plasma TVs that people have used. So it's loosely kind of ionized or electrified gas. Anyway, moving on. From the reading, if we wanted to think about some examples of matter, specifically, we've probably highlighted already that matter in the form of elements like carbon, oxygen, hydrogen, and nitrogen, I would have those highlighted because that's 4 types of matter, 4 specific elements of matter. And other places that I have information, I should see that matter also can be in minerals in the soil, so those would be solids, right? Or gases in the air, or you can find matter in plants and animals and decomposers in the living cells. So that small paragraph there is pretty important. All right, so here's a question for us. How can we use the models to illustrate and explain the cycles of matter through the living and non-living parts of an ecosystem? We do like models in science because we can explain things in a more simple way and show exactly what's happening. So we will be investigating how matter, in the form of carbon, that is one specific element, moves through an ecosystem today. All right, so we have a carbon cycle where we have carbon coming from carbon dioxide going to plants for photosynthesis or other producers. And we have animal respiration. When the animals are breathing, they breathe out carbon, or carbon dioxide rather, so the carbon comes out in carbon dioxide. We also know that as animals die and get decomposed, they're actually going to release carbon and other elements into soil. And when we burn things, we are releasing carbon into the atmosphere. So we'll look at lots of ways that carbon moves around. Right now, on your Cornell notes, maybe write down as many cycles as you think of. And so, of course, I'm not thinking about bicycle or unicycle. I'm asking you to think about other cycles that we have talked about in science. So you can pause the video and then come back and see if I came up with different ones from you. All right, so cycles that we might talk about in our class. We have the water cycle, of course, right? So water is evaporating. It might become a cloud and then come back down as precipitation in snow or rain or whatever. And now it's a liquid or possibly a solid, and it keeps going around in a big cycle. We also have a butterfly life cycle. So we have eggs that become a caterpillar, which becomes a chrysalis, which becomes a butterfly, which lays more eggs. So it just goes around and around. It's a cycle. And hopefully in 5th grade, you talked about the rock cycle, where you might break up pieces of rock, and when they are all laid together one on top of the other in layers, we end up with sedimentary rock. After time and pressure, that might become metamorphic rock. And then your metamorphic rock, if it is close enough to a heat source, near a volcano, for example, it can melt and can become released from the volcano, where it is now igneous rock. Let me actually read this. So the matter doesn't just go away, it simply changes forms. It moves to a different location in the biosphere. So in the case of photosynthesis, you know that carbon, as part of the matter, started out in carbon dioxide. And in the end, after photosynthesis, you could find that carbon in the glucose sugar molecule. All right, what is carbon and why should I care? We're going to think about another portrait of a graduate attribute today. So this is the attribute of communication. So the skill that we do that shows that we are good communicators is we read to understand and evaluate and learn. Right? So we're going to read because that is a form of communication, right? Reading and writing and speaking and listening. All right, so in your packet, you're going to read the first 2 pages of a Newsela article that says, what is the carbon cycle? There are actually 3 pages of this article, but for now, you can just read pages 2 and 3 of your packet, which is the first two pages of this article. Okay, you can try out your Cornell notes if you'd like to, write some important things. Definitely focus on the word carbon when you see the word carbon, and focus on how the carbon moves. Where does it go? Where does it start? Where does it go? It's a bit of reading, so you want to make sure that you you make at least 6 annotations. I'm giving you 20 minutes in class to work on that. You're going to read through at least the first 2 pages of this article and make annotations. And then if you need a break from that article, you can start working on your Pear Deck. So you're going to work on the around and around day 1 Pear Deck. And my apologies for not having the video go quite all the way down. Where do we find carbon then after reading? We find carbon in animals, fruits and vegetables, fossil fuels, although of course that takes a really long time, right? We find carbon in the emissions of plants like this one, power plants and things. Anything that is burning items is going to release carbon. In carbon dioxide, of course, and then in plants, other plants and flowers and trees. All right. So carbon moves around, right? And it moves between 4 basic spheres. We have our biosphere. Bio means alive or living. So living plants and animals, that's our biosphere. This is our atmosphere. It's going to be the gases that are close to the earth. This with earth and soil and terrestrial material, that's our geosphere. And when we're looking at water, that's going to be our hydrosphere. All right. So if I want to move carbon from the atmosphere to the biosphere, I might have to do photosynthesis, right? That takes it from carbon dioxide, plucks off that carbon, and makes a big molecule of glucose. So we went from atmosphere to biosphere by doing photosynthesis. How can we go the other direction from the biosphere to the atmosphere? Well, that's through cellular respiration and actually having animals breathe. That's a way. So how is carbon removed from the atmosphere? If there's carbon in the atmosphere, we know that in order to get rid of it, we can simply perform photosynthesis. That's a way, right? So if you perform photosynthesis, you get carbon out of the atmosphere and into a leaf, at least temporarily. Also, carbon can have some gas exchanges with water in the ocean. So realize that that's another location where you can remove carbon from the atmosphere and store it in the ocean. All right, so I talked about, photosynthesis. I talked about that carbon exchange with the water of the ocean. And if I want to add carbon to the atmosphere, what can I do? Well, when I want to add carbon, I might do cellular respiration. I might do decomposition. So if something dies and is decomposing, it's going to break apart some of those molecules and allow some carbon out. And if I burn anything, that's going to be combustion happening. Okay. You're going to experience life as a carbon atom. So I'm not really going to show this as a video, but I do want to say that during the class day, I'm backing up. This is important. You want to make sure that you try to get that Pear Deck done during the school day, just so that you understand how that stuff is. There are videos that will help you. And as I get through to where I am now, 1 second, sorry. Oh my goodness, we've already done all these slides. Sorry. Okay, so if you were going to pretend that you are a carbon atom and have life as a carbon atom, I'm just going to show you what we started with, but this is something that you'll probably need to come into the classroom to see. So everybody got assigned a specific location to start. You begin at your assigned station, write your station name on the travel log, and then every time you arrive at a different station, or even the same one, you need to roll the die again and follow the directions to indicate your next station. You're recording your data on this data sheet as you go, and if you end up at the same station twice in a row, you do record that both times. All right, so if I started out as ocean plants girl, I roll my die, and there are dice around, and I might find that it says you are a carbohydrate in the plant which has been eaten by an animal. Whoops, right? No more of that plant because it's now in the belly of something else. So where did the carbon go? It went from ocean plants to an ocean consumer, right? So following the energy and the matter in this case. You roll your die at the ocean consumer place location. And I have this out of order, but what happens if I roll it and it tells me to go to ocean consumer again? Well, maybe now I get chomped on by another ocean consumer. So in this case, my carbon started out in a plant. A consumer ate it, so now my carbon was in the consumer, and then another consumer ate that plant, and so I'm tracing my carbon. If you end up going to the same location, if there are people waiting to use the dice, you need to wait at the back of the line. All right, these were seat numbers that I just used randomly to have students go find their starting place, their station that they needed to start with. It was random, and around the room, people chose a place to start, and then they would go. So if you started in land consumers, you would maybe go and roll the die for land consumers and see what happened, and perhaps you died and just went into the soil and then eventually became a land plant. It's hard to know, so you're just going to read the instructions. All right, so another example, if you started as in the atmosphere, let me move that, sorry. If you started out in the atmosphere, your carbon in the atmosphere, so that's carbon dioxide, right? You start out in the atmosphere, and when you roll the die, it says you got dissolved into a stream. Go to freshwater. Great. So you can write got dissolved in a stream, and then you go over to the freshwater station and you roll the die and see what happened to you there. So this is probably something you'd need to do in Falcon Focus. All right. Most classes rather didn't finish this yet. So what we're going to have you do is take your piece of paper that's in your packet that looks like this, put a star by the place that you started. So you might have started at ocean plants, you might have started at the deep ocean particles, wherever you started, put a star. Then take the next location and draw an arrow to it. So in this case, this person started as atmosphere and then became surface ocean. So you stay in atmosphere and you draw an arrow to surface ocean. Once you were at surface ocean, something happened and it said you're going to ocean plants. So you would draw an arrow to ocean plants. Then when it says ocean plants again, you're still at ocean plants, so you need to kind of show an arrow that says that you left ocean plants and came back. All right. Eventually, after Ocean Plants, it might let me leave and go somewhere, and it might tell me that I can go to Ocean Consumers. So there are 10 different stations, and you're going to use colorful big dice cubes at each one and try to do 20 different stations. And when you finish, you can come back to your desk and you can either finish your Newsela article, rather. You can just try to dive in and do your exit ticket right away. Just remember that if you use your packet, it's going to be particularly helpful, and you want to try twice to make sure that you get full credit. If you have not already turned in your homework today, technically you're already late, but go ahead and get that turned in. Make sure your first and last names are on there. And thanks for watching.